The namesake. As a practicing midwife, Eva knew all the telltale signs and symptoms. Her morning nausea and extreme mood swings and emotional storms were all the proof needed. One of her students would now have to nurse her into motherhood. She was definitely older than others who had their first child. She knew the process and dreaded the worst parts of the grind to parenthood. To complicate the situation, she and Toby, her first and brand new husband, were the vanguard of the security and governance of the Boneyard. She was not elected nor had she ever sought her position. Before Toby became her mate, she alone was the undisputed ruler over an enormous wilderness nation which included the entire Yellowstone National Park, the Teton Mountain Range, most of Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and parts of Utah and Colorado. With Toby and a small army of warriors riding terror birds, 7-foot-tall flightless birds, they patrolled their borders and evaluated the wildlife for signs of stress, disease, or poaching. They had a schedule based on the seasonal shifts in weather and animal behaviors. Eva surmised she was 2 months into her gestation. The birth rate among humans 100,000 years ago was very low. Women ovulated once each annual cycle, not once every full moon phase. Each pregnancy was therefore precious and anticipated with great reverence as a gift. Hers would be anticipated by an entire nation. She was not yet prepared to announce her condition, fearing the demand to forego her trek riding a top sprinter for hundreds of miles. The warrior queen wanted this last ride around her beloved Boneyard nation before motherhood took center stage for several months. She already knew her child was a girl whose name would be Mona. No one in the 3 tribes of her country had this name. This was a name from her childhood and her dreams. The guardian, Mona, would sometimes come to her in dreams and visions, imparting wisdom and useful concepts. When Eva was 7 cycles old, a stranger had appeared one day and had messages for her parents. This woman saved her life and stayed with her people for several weeks. She was an amazing person, wise, resourceful and kind. Her name was Mona and taught her how to use the sling, how to swim, how to defend herself and to think as a warrior. This morning was the first day on the trail and Eva was angry and getting more irritated at Toby for not inventorying their supplies properly before their departure. The normally detailed and compulsive Toby had carelessly forgotten to bring her medical supplies. As the senior healer, midwife, and surgeon, Eva just knew she would have to improvise if some unexpected injury was to befall the team of 15 warriors and their mounts. Though still technically newlyweds, this was to be their first old married couple moment. To Eva's relief, Toby informed her after her emotional reaction, that by the second night a rider would meet them with additional provisions to include her medical kit. Not to worry, he had it under control. Eva thought she was now going to have to reveal her secret to her husband or she might not make it back from their journey. For years she had warned couples awaiting their first child to expect emotional peaks and valleys, never thinking she would one day fall prey to the same experiences. These travails were not anticipated because she had a club foot and was therefore not allowed to marry, and of course, children were out of the question. This custom of her clan was to prevent genetic deformities from being passed down to future generations. Only when other traditions were introduced into her burgeoning nation did this custom fade away. That night Eva decided to tell Toby he was to become a father. How did one do this, especially while in the company of warriors on a mission where privacy was minimal? Once the company had bedded down for the evening, Eva took Toby to her favorite place in the Boneyard to experience the sunset. There they held hands and faced the yellow, gold, and red rays of light. Reluctantly, Eva turned toward Toby, but before she could say anything he firmly stated, "Little badger, you are pregnant, aren't you?" Eva, sucker punched him in the solar plexus. As Toby was recovering from the force of her assault, Eva smirked and said, "Yes, I am, and you should have waited for me to tell you, you spoiled my surprise." Toby interjects, "Trust me, I am excited, ecstatic and thankful at the news. I suspected your condition for some time now." In mild aggravation Eva asked, "Bet you don't know the child's sex or name, do you?" Toby returns volley, "Well, I guess not. Are you going to tell me or keep me in suspense?" Eva inquired, "Since you know, does everyone else know?" Toby retorted, "Well yes, it is talk of the land, everyone is taking bets on when the child will be born and whether it is a girl or boy. Why didn't you tell me? I knew you would get around to it when you were ready. Good graces, if I am not blind, dumb, and stupid. Don't be hard on yourself, you are beloved by all and adored by me, our child is blessed to have an entire nation to care and raise it. So, are you going to tell me more? I will have to think about it, maybe I should wait for the whole lot of them to name her. So, our child is a girl. Yes, and her name is Mona. Mona, what kind of name is that? It is a great name, a wonderful name, so get used to it. Okay, it is sort of catchy, it will grow on me. So, when will she be born? In about 7 moon cycles. The rest of the trip went as expected. The elk and bison herds were thriving. The spawning areas were flush with the proper level of water and the waterfowl were nesting appropriately. Thank goodness the mammoth herds had avoided the majority of the beaver damming areas this year. There was no evidence of poaching or incursion of other human tribes. Within 30 days the team returned to their capital, the old terror bird breeding basin. Eva was beginning to show and it was now completely obvious. The official word was announced at the lakeshore communal fire pit. The crowd was very large. Several hundred people and terror birds were in attendance. The oldest man and woman of the clans along with Raven and Jewel, clan leaders of the birds, stood together and performed the simple customary ceremony. In this celebration a hide worn by Eva was removed by the eldest woman. She handed it to the oldest man and he spread it on the ground. There the people came by and placed any memento, gift, or craft they wished to give Eva, Toby and their future child. It became quickly apparent the hide was way too small for all the gifts. Eva was not into possessions, so this custom to help new parents to her became a logistics nightmare. She was already very wealthy in earthly baubles and did not want to offend anyone's act of kindness. So, she selected one item which she held up for all to see and asked everyone to return to get their offering. All did so without complaint. What she kept was a small but beautiful turquoise stone. It reminded Eva of the stone she prized as a small child, which had given to Mona the stranger who taught her so many new things before she left. Eva thought this stone would be given to her child when she was old enough to understand its meaning and attached history. Eva's pregnancy proceeded normally and Mona was born a healthy baby with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her hair and eye color was the same as her mother's at her birth. Eva's hair turned brunette later in her youth and the same was expected for Mona later on as well. Eva didn't tell anyone that the first time she saw Mona she counted each of the newborn's fingers and toes twice. Her infant was a perfect little girl. No sign of any deformity. What a relief! Eva's fears were not irrational, she prayed her child would never struggle against the obstacles she had to. Her club foot made her childhood and adult life so different than all those around her. Eva in her most intimate feelings fought each day to overcome her handicap. She was thankful to the Creator her child did not have to suffer as she had. Though physically perfect, Eva's child was far from normal. Mona was so unique many would call her weird. She seldom cried and refused to speak when other children were already conversing. She preferred sign language and intuitively anticipated everything her parents wanted. It was like she read their thoughts. She spent much of her day around Jewel and Raven. The two elderly terror birds and she were inseparable. Eva always knew where Mona was when out of sight. The active child was on Raven or Jewel's back. Toby said Eva was more bird than human. These behaviors persisted until the bird child was in her early teens. Mona would accompany her parents on their inspection tours. Raven and Jewel would often tag along to babysit and protect the youngster. This gave Toby and Eva great freedom to perform their official duties, so they never considered Eva's preferences as a burden or strange. It never occurred to them their daughter was essentially being raised by two 700-pound flightless apex predators. One day Eva spoke clearly and with great authority. To everyone's amazement she announced there was an enormous threat to the Boneyard. Eva was stunned. Ecstatic over Mona's newfound verbal skills but disturbed over her proclamation. Eva did not know whether to cry or laugh. So she did both. Toby followed suit. The young prophet could not give specifics but was certain of the impending dangers ahead. Eva was well aware that her daughter could have such premonitions, she had often had the exact same experiences. However, this was the first time Mona had communicated such feelings. Temporarily ignoring this enormous threat, Eva felt it was time for a mother-daughter talk. She asked Mona to take a private walk with her. Mona complied but was hesitant. Eva thought this was going to be difficult but necessary. As they proceeded to Eva's favorite spot overlooking the Whitewater River, a calm came over her. She felt her daughter's turmoil but also sensed a great peace as well. Eva comprehended a deep wisdom and knowing. Her love for her daughter was the strongest feelings she ever experienced. She and Toby would give up their lives for her without a second's hesitation. Suddenly during their return walk, Eva was jolted with a scene of destruction, fire, steam, heat, and flowing lava. Though a vision, she knew it was real. She was dumbfounded. Her daughter was right. But how much time did they have? They must act, plans must be made and scouts sent out immediately to evaluate the situation. After a quick discussion with Toby, the three went in opposite directions. Mona went with Raven and Jewel and 3 riders north, Toby went east and Eva went west. Another trusted scout went south. They were to meet at the basin within 2 weeks. Mona's vector took her deep into the ancient caldera that formed the bulk of what is now Yellowstone National Park. The thermals, hot springs, and geysers were extremely active. The sulfur dioxide was dangerously high and prevented them from penetrating areas normally accessible. Some streams were too hot to sustain the fish and piles of their bodies were forming check dams along the banks and forming shallow pools. They found many elk, bear, and wolf carcasses laying untouched by vultures and condors. They felt several ground quakes and aftershocks. They had seen enough. They headed for the basin immediately. The 4 scouting teams met with the settlement representatives as soon as all returned. The meeting was held at Eva's compound. It was a solemn affair. Life had been safe and prosperous since the Fanatics had been expelled over 20 years ago. No one wanted to leave their beautiful and abundant surroundings. This was their home and they loved it. The very thought they would be forced to leave was repugnant. The teams reported one at a time. No snow remained within 100 miles in every direction, the ground temperatures simply melted everything. Many streams were too hot and polluted to safely drink from them. Game had either died or was being forced to flee at an ever-increasing pace the closer one got to the center of their hunting grounds. The fish, waterfowl, and beavers were dead or were too weak or sick to flee and in the process of dying. The basin was presently at the outer edge of the most afflicted areas but conditions were worsening. If things progressed at the same pace as now, it would not be long before things were unlivable. Those present voted to leave. But they had no idea where they could go. All they knew was they could not go north. That would only take them into the heart of the beast. They had no idea how far they must go to escape the conditions they were leaving. As everyone was waiting for someone to speak, Mona, the 13-year-old daughter of Eva and Toby, broke the silence. She said in a firm, steady voice, "We will follow the main elk and bison herds. They are our food sources and they will instinctively seek safety and grazing areas. We have 500 mounted warriors, few can stand in our way. The sooner we follow the herds the better. We once were nomads, seeking game and food as the seasons cycled. We will turn to that life until it is safe to return. We now have only a few days left before this ground becomes our graves." All were stunned by her words and none objected. The die was cast. Mona turned to her mother and said, "You must lead them, without you, most will perish." Eva, stunned and in shock, gave the following directions. "Toby, take our best scouts and locate the herds and the direction they are fleeing. Everyone else, we will leave in 3 days. Make sleds and take warm hides. Weapons are more important than cooking utensils. Jerky and dried fruit is more important than beads. Footwear is more useful than decorative blankets. Do I make myself clear?" The meeting ended and all went to prepare for a new life and a new struggle to survive. On the 4th morning the people and terror birds were gathered in the common area near the lake. The weather was hot and the sulfur odor was very strong. Eva gave the last instructions. The lead warriors and their mounts left first. They proceeded in the direction supplied by Toby and his advanced scouts. Within 1 hour all had left their beloved basin. No one knew if they would ever return. All were sad and many cried as they cleared the exit to their haven of 20 years. Many years and thousands of miles later, Eva and Toby were holding a tribal council. The years had been extremely hard, their numbers were half of what they had been when they left their sanctuary. Little Mona, Raven, and Jewel left with half of the Boneyard nation to follow the elk herds. The rest of the nation stayed with Eva and Toby to follow the bison herds. There had been no meeting between the two divisions for over 19 years. Eva grieved for her daughter, wondering if Raven and Jewel were still with Mona. Toby was in good health but slowing down significantly, preferring to walk instead of riding on Topaz most of the time. Their son Journey was about to turn 18 cycles old. He was just like his father, strong, dependable, and handsome. All the young single women were seeking his attention, but so far he was not showing any favoritism. Journey was an excellent tracker, herder and warrior. He was sure to become a leader at some level and at some time. Like his mother, he had a knack for the healing arts, but it was not his focus. The Bison Clan, as they were now calling themselves, discovered domesticating bison was not impossible. In fact, the bulk of the clan now limited their seasonal range to within a radius of 100 miles. A far cry of the distances covered just 10 years before. Their people now had 2 settlements, one for late spring and one for late fall. The young Journey was a quick study. If he was shown something once, he retained it. Little escaped his attention. He saw something that was out of the ordinary and he knew he must talk with his mother. A light was blinking briefly in the sky, which was not a star. It was near the horizon. He noticed it for 2 nights in a row and then it was gone. When he returned from a scouting trip, he went to greet his parents. After the pleasantries, he mentioned his observations. Eva alerted on the details immediately. She questioned him thoroughly and related an experience from her youth. It seems when she was 7 a stranger had appeared and had saved and greatly changed her life. There were brief sightings of strange objects and blinking lights in the sky surrounding some of the events. She wondered if there was a connection. Mona looked down at the small turquoise stone in her hand. It was given to her by her mother when they parted over 19 years ago. She was now 32 cycles and was still the leader of her clan, the Elk Clan. Her husband was the leader of the Mammoth Clan and they had 3 children. The eldest was a girl, Eve, named in honor of her grandmother Eva. The 2 youngest were boys named Blaze and Summit. The stone she rolled in her fingers had been her constant companion and gave her comfort, especially in her darkest moments. The years had been difficult. Raven and Jewel had died within days of each other over 5 years ago. She loved her husband Flint, but they were often apart, since they did not share the same leadership roles. Their marriage was originally more of a practical and political alliance than a union based on affection and attraction. They had grown closer over the years, yet still not at the depth she desired. Not like her parents. She so yearned to see them once again. The elk and mammoth herds came within close proximity twice each cycle. These encounters with the herds and the clans lasted for maybe 3 full moons annually. Mona was now without her husband and facing a potential crisis. Wildfires caused by lightning strikes had stripped the foraging areas of the elk herds dramatically. They were on the move and her people needed to follow their food source. She had no practical way to notify Flint of her dilemma. So, she ordered the clan to move and hoped for the best. Days of hard travel resulted in the death of many clansmen and terror birds. Hostile tribes were encountered multiple times in their sojourn. Fighting off raids took their toll. Finally, they ended up in an area 100 miles from where they started. The location was acceptable and defendable, with sufficient water and alternate food sources. She now had time to rest and reminisce about her life. She had never been this sad. Eva and Toby were now convinced via Journey's scouting report prairie fires were raging to their south in such intensity and frequency they needed to move their bison herds immediately. So, the order went out to move. This was an enormous risk. They were certain to encounter hostile tribes in their efforts to escape from the fire threat. So for the first time in years, Eva, Toby, and Journey mounted up and headed north with 15 additional riders to scope out the territory and hostile tribes they might encounter. They rode north for 3 days without incident. At the end of the third day they saw smoke in the air which looked more like an encampment than the remains of sporadic wildfires. That evening they camped and set up sentries to alert them if attacked. The next morning Journey mounted up and took 2 companion riders toward the possible encampment. Within 30 minutes the trio was surrounded by a large war party of mounted terror birds. This was the first time Journey had seen any others like themselves. He had his men throw down their weapons and announced who they were and asked to talk to their clan leader. To his surprise they understood his request. The 3 were brought to the encampment. Journey was told to dismount and walk into the camp accompanied by 2 armed guards. He was stopped in front of the central fire pit of the new settlement. Several warriors stood facing him. The men parted and Mona stepped forward to confront the intruder. Mona was immediately struck by this handsome warrior's youth, fearless posture, and strength. She observed him for several moments before she addressed him. She said clearly, "What people do you represent, what is your purpose and what do we call you?" Journey was mesmerized by the clan leader's beauty and authoritative voice. He hesitated but answered. "My name is Journey. My people are the Bison Clan and we seek temporary grazing for our herds." More calmly he says, "We do not seek to fight, we come to share our knowledge and will compensate you for our presence." Mona asks, "You ride terror birds as we do, where did you get such knowledge and cooperation from the bird people?" The young warrior responded, "It is before my time, however, my parents know our history and will be able to answer any questions you may have." Mona quickly questions, "Who are your parents?" Journey is quiet briefly but finally states, "My parents are the leaders of the Bison Clan." Mona looks deeply into the warrior's eyes and requests, "What are their names?" The young man, wanting to protect his parents, is hesitant but decides to be honest, sensing this woman is not to be toyed with. "Their names are Eva and Toby." The scouting party was prepared to continue north but was waiting on Journey and his 2 companions to return. Eva was getting worried about the time the 3 appeared riding toward them in a deliberate pace. She walked toward them along with Toby. The trio stopped and dismounted. Journey walked to converse with his parents. He reached into his sling stone pouch and retrieved a necklace and handed it to his mother. He said, "The clan leader told me to give this to you. The chief then asked for you, father and I to return to their camp. The rest of our party is welcome to come later." Eva eyed the necklace closely and saw the turquoise stone she had given Mona nearly 20 years ago. She was overwhelmed. Eva showed Toby the stone and he immediately recognized the gem. She asked her son, "Describe the clan leader to me." He said, "I was impressed, she was beautiful, strong, and confident, probably in her early mid-years, it was clear her clansmen respected her. Also, they were bird riders. They called themselves the Elk Clan." Eva asked, "Did she give you her name?" Journey retorted quickly, "No, she did not." Eva took the necklace and placed it around her neck and said, "Let's go." They arrived at the camp within 40 minutes and were escorted by several mounted warriors from Mona's clan. The 3 entered the new settlement and dismounted. Sprinter and Topaz accompanied them. The 5 approached the center fire pit. There the entire clan was assembled. The proud Elk Clan chief stood apart from the crowd awaiting them. Mona restrained her excitement as long as she could. When they were within 20 yards she ran toward them and jumped into her father's arms. She hugged and assaulted Eva next and later attacked Topaz and Sprinter. Journey was stunned beyond recognition. His parents had not warned him at all. He finally realized this person assaulting his parents was his sister Mona. After Eva calmed down, she told her long-lost parents she had a surprise for them. She turned behind them and motioned 3 young people separated from the onlookers. The first was a female and then 2 younger male children followed. She presented them. "This one is Eve, the next is Blaze and the last is Summit, these are your grandchildren." There was a celebration that night as a grand reunion took place. New introductions and new memories were created that would last for lifetimes. After most were exhausted and fell asleep, Eva took Mona aside and they walked together in the moonlight and stars. Eva, now sporting more grey hair than brown, was awestruck at her daughter's beauty. During the walk Eva returned the necklace with the turquoise stone to Mona. Eva explained, the stone in this necklace is to follow your bloodline from this day forward. I believe it is magical. When the Boneyard nation honored your father and I with gifts anticipating your birth, this appeared on the gift hide and was the only offering I chose to keep. It was also the only gift that had no acknowledged giver. None of the clan's people said it was from them. It was a gift left unattached to anyone. It was a mystery. The turquoise was exactly like the one I found as a young child and became my prized possession. I gave it to the mystery warrior that saved my life and shared with me much wisdom. You are her namesake. Her name was a name not known to our ancestors, an unknown name. I gave it to you. Mona. Mona took the necklace and put it around her neck once more. She solemnly swore, "It is my honor and pleasure to do as you have asked. It will be passed down through my children until our memories are just mist and the stone is the only solid connection to the past." 75,000 years later. Captain Mona and Lisa, commander of the mothership Dragonfly, sat in her wardroom with two prized new crew members. She had just shown them still images of the exchange between Eva and her daughter Mona. All three had tears in their eyes. The good captain said, "The stone is the one Eva gave me before I left Earth. The difference now is it contains a quantum communications node. As long as the stone is with your bloodline, we will know their location and can monitor if necessary. As we do further research into human history, we may find it necessary to re-engage. I am honored to be part of this remarkable lineage." To be continued. Volume 1, Mona Lisa on the Moon, 32,000 Years in the Making, Kindle edition. 32,000 years ago, a gifted child is born into a world most would consider paradise. There has not been a war or hunger for some 8,000 years. The ozone layer is 4 times thicker than it will be later. Genetic abnormalities are nearly non-existent and there are no diseases. As she matures, Mona and Lisa, just one of a highly advanced civilization on Earth, prepares to fulfill her destiny. Check out George B's book about Mona at Amazon.com.